One of the really interesting announcements that um, happened at AdeptiCon this last year was the announcement that there would be event-specific models. Now, as primarily a collector, I found this to be very interesting and exciting news. I don't play that much. I don't hobby as well as a lot of other people, but I'm pretty good at collecting models, and I love really exploring the model line and having a good understanding of what models are available. Now, these types of specific event models are kind of a challenge because they're not the part of a regular catalog. They're not something that you often see, so finding details about them can be a real challenge. Now, the statement from Adepticon, and I'll read it out, was that over the past few years, we've been lucky enough to support and attend some fantastic independent events around the world, with Adepticon being one of the highlights of our calendar. The passion of the organizers and attendees of these events has been nothing short of inspirational, and we really wanted to do something extra special to award their commitment to the Warhammer hobby. So, starting at Adepticon 2019, we'll be introducing all new miniatures and giving them exclusively to events like Adepticon and their attendees. Here's an early concept of what the first miniature might look like. That's the picture I have up on the screen. This is a Primaris Space Marine captain of some sort. What I think is kind of interesting that they would show a concept of a model that's clearly finished, but it's worth considering that Games Workshop likely does have a lot of one-off models designed that were never released as part of the regular model line. I think it looks good. I think, I love specific models. I haven't actually picked up any Primaris Space Marines yet, but I'm definitely interested. The model looks good, and I really like the idea of it. Games Workshop has a history of releasing limited edition models as part of army boxes. In the past, there's a number of anniversary models for the company and Warhammer 40k and Fantasy Battles. And even the launch of their new website and such a number of years ago, they released a few different models, and more recently there have been a few other promotions that have, again, coincided with the release of a new model. Sometimes these are fairly limited models that are eventually released alongside the regular product line, but most of them remain fairly exclusive. So I think that obviously one of the more parallels that you could have for this new system is much like the old Games Day system. We're kind of at a point now where maybe enough people have joined in the last few years that I should probably explain what Games Day really was for those that might not have attended, or maybe, again, someone that just joined the hobby relatively recently. So Games Days were an event that were held in multiple countries yearly. There were Games Days in the United States, in Baltimore, I think Los Angeles, Chicago. I think there were 2 or 3 every year, or that they just switched. I can't really remember now. But they were held in Canada, I think in Toronto, obviously in the UK, and France and Germany, I think Italy, and Australia. So they were really all over the world. And this was an opportunity, as kind of the current Adepticon has become, and the Las Vegas Open. This is kind of an opportunity for personalities from Games Workshop from the UK to visit. I had some of my books brought with me, and so that you can kind of get some autographs and things like that when I went. And so some Black Library authors arrived, and there are opportunities for open gaming, not really a tournament setting as I recall, but certainly open gaming and different types of multiplayer. Very much a Games Workshop community vibe, because there was not much of a competitive atmosphere at all. But there were dioramas, and of course Golden Demon was held there as well. So this was basically now, ever since 2014, it still occurs, but it only occurs now in the UK as far as I know, and it's called Warhammer Fest. It's been rebranded. So, but important to this discussion, they would also release a specific model that could only be purchased at the event. There were a few variations. I think there were models in France in one year that were unique to others, but by and large, you'd have to go to the games day to buy it. One relatively very strictly one person per model, although you can kind of hop back in line, and if the guy doesn't recognize you, you could kind of buy a second. Mrs. Hooves went with me once, and so she bought one, so therefore I got two. That went on the secondary market. But so I attended twice in 2009 and 2010, and of course I ensured that I picked up those specific event models. So the proposed plan that I read from AdeptiCon would seem to follow that example. But there's a core phrase in that statement that I think is interesting, because it says that events like AdeptiCon might the first model will be at AdeptiCon 2019, but then other events like AdeptiCon might also have their own models, which is an interesting development. Again, as I said, there's some precedent for some games days having specific models, but by and large, it does raise some question for me if it's the exact same model available at several different events, if the same model is available at Warhammer Fest, Adepticon, Las Vegas Open, something like that. You know, that's reasonable. More exciting, but more of a challenge, is if they do a specific event model for every event. Now, for someone like a collector like myself, I both love the idea of these types of event models, but they're also like a curse. Again, you know, I love having unique models in my collection, but it's a challenge to find information about them, you know, years later. You know, if it's released next year, I'm going to know about it. It'll be all over the news, but for the most part, you know, finding information about Games Day model in 1996 or something, it's a challenge. It can be, at least. And it's somewhat of a curse, because I'm not going to be able to attend all of these events, and so if they do a unique model at each one, I'll have to either buy it on the secondary market or have some agents at each of these events to ship me their models. So we'll see. I think it's very likely that they will have a specific model at Warhammer Fest, and again, I might have to have some of my contacts in the UK pick one up for me or something. Yeah, of course, not everyone is interested in these types of models, which is why a lot of them do show up on the secondary market, because not everyone happens to collect the specific army that the model pertains to. So, you know, that's why they often do find themselves in the secondary market. And again, there's a fairly decent increase in the value. So regardless, I think this is something that I'm very excited about, and we'll see how it certainly develops. It's certainly another motivation for me to attend the 2019 Adepticon, and I hope that 2019 will be different than 2017 and 18, but we'll see, and I'll be keeping my eye for any releases about these specific models. Thanks for tuning in, and have a good one.